All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the DEF CON Voting Village CARVER analysis of the U.S. voting system. We have two esteemed gentlemen and a hacker, so anything you say, oh, there's a camera, hi. I've done nothing ever illegal in my life.
Ever?
Ever.
Okay.
Unsanctioned by the government. So we have Mike Moore from Arizona, Nate Young, I'm Will Baggett. You can read who we are there. So, show of hands before we get started. Anyone familiar with that's some major feedback. All right. Not yet. All right, how about now? Is this good? Before this talk, has anyone heard of the CARVER analytical system? A few people, okay. In World War II, the US OSS, predecessor to the CIA, developed this system for the French resistance to be able to go in, assess the Nazi targets in Germany or wherever, to look at key vulnerabilities. And what if we move this? What if I stand away from your mics? Will that work?
Is it us?
I'm on. You're off. All right. I work remote. I'm used to freaking Teams. And I hate the Teams noise. It causes PTSD. I hate it, especially when your boss pops up unexpected in this age of layoffs and he just has a question, like, really? But I digress. So CARVER was built, no more feedback, as a method for the French resistance to go in, assess a target. So there might be a ball bearing plant in Dresden. And instead of sending over hundreds of B-17s to bomb the target, looking at it, you might see there's one bridge that has gas, oil, and transit coming in and out of the factory 13 miles away from the site. So instead of blowing up the heavily defended ball bearing factory, one satchel charge could take out the entire facility on this bridge that's undefended 13 miles away. Just a simple example. Other things would be how to shut down a con without loss of life. I can't get into that because I don't want to talk to the FBI. But it would show the key vulnerabilities with minimal loss of life and minimal footprint. This is adapted over the years to become an offensive tool to see where a key system weakness is or where we can really augment the defense of a company that we're unaware there's a weak point. So CARVER is an acronym just like everything else in government. So you've got criticality. How important is this to the function of the system? Accessibility, how easy can we reach it? Recoverability, if we take this out, this one massive bridge going over the Rhine, what's the effort required for the adversary to rebuild the bridge to put the factory back into production? Vulnerability, how easy is this to reach? The effect, what would happen if we take this pillar out? And recognizability, would the adversary recognize that this is a key function? Years ago, I don't want to say how many years, there was a new GUI put in where I was working at and if you clicked debit and credit on the same field on this new software rollout, it would cause a loop condition and the entire banking processing system would lock up for the entire enterprise. We were told, do not do this because you will lose your job. And that's pretty good motivation not to click A and B unless you have a better job and you don't like your manager. I didn't do that because I passed a polygraph later, but things like that do exist. So an insider, just like that example, knows the key weakness of a system. It's usually one Excel spreadsheet. And the US election system may have one or two key vulnerabilities that truly require protection from the adversary that if that went out, the rest of the system just wouldn't work. So going through the chart, criticality and effect are the two main things. Yes, if we took this out, how critical is it? How effective is it? And does it matter if they know who did it because this is an act of war or this is active sabotage of what's the level of attribution you want for this? So again, this would show the targets that are most vulnerable and what would be the high risk matrix. Going apolitical, I've learned giving enough presentations, people go with science fiction, they go with movies. Here we have a scene from the historical Battle of Scarif, where one hammerhead corvette was able to take out the entire defense system of, was it Jeddah? No, not Jeddah, Scarif, right? Scarif, yeah. And then the transmissions were able to get out for the one key weakness of the Death Star to be exploited and then We've all seen Star Wars 1, I assume, I would hope, being DEF CON. So again, that would be a key vulnerability that the adversary didn't see coming. It took someone with a quick analytical mind to take it out at a loss of life, but it still enabled the plot line for merchandising, for the movie to go forward. There's a saying for insider threat that if you drop a concrete block on my toe, whether you do it on purpose or an accident, the effect is still the same. When the OPM database for the Fed US clearance system was outsourced to a company in Argentina, who then subsourced it to China and gave full rewrite access to this clearance database, they saw it as a cost-cutting measure, but the damage of giving name, address, all the clearance records for the SF71 database is now in the hands of the adversary, where they would have read-write access to insert someone's name just like the voting rolls. They didn't have a clearance, but now they're in scattered castles. Is this person truly cleared? We have to go back and revet all the people who have clearances. So getting into this, knowing we're a little bit behind schedule, starting off at about 7 minutes late, the green lines for CARVER wouldn't affect anything, no impact, to highest damage, worst thing possible. We have to protect this through any means possible. An example would be Conti ransomware. 2022, you may have heard that Russia invaded Ukraine. I don't know if you saw that on the news, but that happened a couple years back. Conti Ransomware was a Russian front company gathering funds for the Russian government. They were producing about $180 million per year in revenue for Russia, for the war effort. One Ukrainian on the team kind of disagreed with Russia invading his home country. He aggregated all the source code, exit nodes for their C2 command and control, what malware they're using, the code, the vulnerabilities they're using per company, the list of email addresses they had compromised, even granular down to the point of, this is Widget Incorporated, these are the CVEs they haven't patched, these are the people that are vulnerable that we can contact with phishing emails, an exact playbook on how to penetrate any company on their target list. The one Ukrainian leaked it out. Conti is no longer an active ransomware group from one person's actions. And when I was doing cyber threat intelligence, we went through this and ranked it. Their source code, their crown jewels, that's the most important thing. If you don't have the malware, the ransomware, you can't be a ransomware company without ransomware. It doesn't work. Credentials, they come and go. You can always get new credentials. Those are always available on the dark web. The infrastructure, they could take time to rebuild, but their methodology is known, so it's easier for the blue team to defend against. Staff does come and does go. Maybe they can hire some North Korean IT workers to fill the staff that have been compromised. The core designers, they're known, they're under sanction, they're being observed by US and allied intelligence. So ranking the scale here, it came down to that the source code, the designers, and infrastructure for Conti were the most important pieces for the operation. I'm not comparing the US system of voting to ransomware. That's just an example before we start getting flamed on Reddit here. Also, just because you can access a database, change a label on something from A to B, or upload Rick Astley's photo onto a voting machine doesn't mean it's been hacked. It means you came to DEF CON with Rick Astley on a USB drive. What the hell? You uploaded it and you put your photo on TikTok that you hacked a voting machine. That's not hacking a voting machine. That's Control-C, that's Control-V. But the perception is every year, DEF CON attendee hacks a voting machine and puts Rick Astley up there. Now, Conti defined the crown jewels of what they would go after as emails, addresses, databases, source code for the target organization, accounting information. How much money does this org have? How much can they pay us for ransomware? The design documents for both the internal company, their servers, offline servers, backup servers, their design documents, which they didn't consider enough to protect, but here we are. The passwords, both theirs that they didn't protect, passwords for other companies, which enabled those companies to immediately go in, harden their passwords even though they were leaked. Digital wallets, there's a gentleman here who won a Bitcoin recently over being able to hack a previously encrypted wallet. So when the three of us sat down yesterday, we ranked the US voting system for this exercise. Voting rolls, mail-in ballots, cyber support, the auxiliary systems that go in for not just the voting machines, but everything managing that, the full infrastructure per county, per state. Audits. That seems nobody really wants to do audits. It's a necessary job, but I don't see audit village here. The logistical chain, not yet. She's going to start it next year. Oh, God, don't let the IRS hear about that. The logistical chain, getting the machines to and from A and B, how do you procure them, how do you update them, how do you store them, how do you maintain them, which ties into the physical security of the machines. And lastly, the reputation of the voting system itself, because if you don't have the intrinsic trust that everything is still accurate and perfect, but you read on TikTok, Telegram, or wherever that something happened and you want to believe that echo chamber, you're not going to believe the system is actually a fair and honest system. So consolidating this, because we have 30 minutes, we're about halfway through already, we condense the talk into these scores. So
so we consolidated several of the previous listed items into what we're calling voting, right? So voting consists of voter registration and voter rolls, early voting in a lot of states. Some states don't have early voting, but if you don't, it's pretty awesome. And then voting on election day. So sorry, I turned my mic off because I thought that was blipping his. So hopefully you heard that. I project pretty well, but in the CARVER scale itself, what is it? The first one, credibility. Credibility in elections is really one of the biggest things at risk here, right? If you don't trust your elections or the processes or the technology behind the elections, that is going to make the entire thing collapse. That little slide that Will showed with the Excel icon holding up the house, that's credibility, right? So if you lose credibility, that whole house falls down. The second one would be accessibility. Accessibility is multi-factored within elections. The actual tabulation systems are highly regulated by the Elections Assistance Commission. It's highly secure in secure buildings, under surveillance, that type of thing. But the locations that you actually go to vote, those are less secure, right? They're in your churches, in your libraries, that type of thing. So you have to take every aspect of voting and treat it as a singular whole when you're assigning and assessing risk, right? So recoverability, that's a big one. I rated it semi-low for us at Maricopa County. If you're not familiar, Maricopa County is has Phoenix, Arizona. We're a pretty big population point, but we have a lot of checks and balances and multi-layer security in play where if for some reason the internet dies, we can't open a voting location, maybe our tabulation building burns down, we have a lot of different options to try and bring that back and recover from those problems. And then vulnerability is semi-low from a tabulation standpoint because, like I said, you have to get into a secure building, do whatever you're going to do that's all nefarious, and then get out without getting caught. And then what's the other one? Effect. And effect is high for us because if anyone does anything to the voting systems, no matter how mundane or non-problematic, it is going to become headline news and we're going to have a problem, right? So those are the main parts for voting. And let's see, what's the next one? Recognizability, still very high. Maricopa County was in the news for tons of news cycles over the past several years, from the cyber ninjas to a bunch of different audits to a bunch of other candidates that lost elections that were not too happy about that. So for us, it's even more important to make sure that we don't have systems in play that can bring negative press and not only, I guess, what you would call hackability.
So just a brief aside, when Will said, hey, do you guys want to be on a panel? I said, yes, absolutely. What's it about? And he said, the CARVER model. And I said, sounds great. I don't know what the hell that is. Can you please teach us about that? But like, this is all very intuitive, hopefully to all of us, right? This is effectively red teaming. This is something that we've already been doing for the past few years, working in the Arizona elections community, we have done the thought exercise of what is everything that we could possibly think of that can go wrong, whether that's cyber security, physical security, reputational security, logistical security, and come up with different scenarios and then run through them in mini tabletop exercises and try to game out, like, how do we prevent these things? How do we detect that they've happened? How do we recover from them if they do happen? How do we communicate with the public to make sure that they understand and they're armed with knowledge? So the next component, cyber element, is complex, right? Because you've got these bifurcated systems. You've got the things that people frequently refer to as voting machines or election machines that would be like tabulators, e-poll books, whether that's a precinct tabulator, and you've got like printers if you're doing ballot on demand. So you've got that type of equipment that is critical and core to elections, and then you've got the other ancillary equipment that is support systems, so like websites, email, people's ability to post to their social media, et cetera. And if you've not already seen in the news, the Arizona Secretary of State's office, of which I'm the CISO, we recently experienced a cyber event where we have a pretty high degree, well, a moderate degree of confidence that it was the nation state of Iran because they defaced our website with a picture of the Ayatollah. And that is definitely unfortunate. I am not in any way dismissing that. Frankly, it makes me quite mad. The timing of this is just a couple days after the United States bombed Iran, so the timing makes sense, the picture of the Ayatollah makes sense. The type of system, it's in no way connected to the actual mechanics of voting, right? Those are air-gap systems that are hyper-protected versus by its very nature, a website must be accessible. So the whole point of doing this exercise is, as a defender, where do we point our attention? Where do we spend our money and our limited resources? Because I can tell you, I do not have enough resources. We've just had to lay off people, including someone from my team, right after being attacked by probably Iran, right? That's frustrating. So I know that we're in the middle of this, but please talk to your legislatures and ask them to give elections more money. We could definitely use more resources. But moving on with cyber element, definitely critical. If we're talking about stuff like our website, that can go down and come back up again, and that's not the end of the world. But if it's election day and the website is defaced on election day, people lose a great degree of confidence if they see a picture of the Ayatollah where candidate Trump or candidate Harris is instead, right? So thankfully, Iran attacked us at not a great time. Accessibility, it depends. That's why we put it depends. The tabulation equipment, air gapped. You have to be in person to affect those types of things. So really, insider threat is one of the greatest risks. That's why we have to focus on, do we have proper locks and badging systems and cameras, and are we using buddy systems where a two-person system, if you're ever going into a critical space, it doesn't matter if you're an election director or if you're a line-level staff, you should be going, hopefully, ideally, in at least pairs, which would force collusion, which makes things less likely. That being said, our smallest county, their elections department has one employee, the election director, right? And that is not unique in the United States of America. There's plenty of counties that are very small. Elections need more resources. Next, we've got recoverability. Some things are able to be recovered very quickly. In the case of our website, we were able to take a known good backup. We were restored to complete functionality within something like 12 hours. If we're talking about a major event that takes down a critical system, such as, like, say you have a election center that has no fire suppression or wet fire suppression, that equipment doesn't work anymore, so you need to have it replaced. Is it election day? That's really bad timing. Vulnerability, it depends. It is really hard to get at those closed air-gap systems. You have to go in person. You can't attack from your mom's basement in China. You've got to go there in person. Versus our website, it has to be highly available. The effectiveness, if you target the equipment that we use to tabulate ballots, like that severely disrupts the process. And I was reminded in preparation for this by our state CISO, we received a whole bunch of bomb threats in the 2024 general election. Arizona's not alone in that. Many states did, right? So folks had to evacuate. That temporarily disrupted our ability to count votes and deliver in a timely fashion. Fortunately, that's something that we anticipated could happen because it's easy, right? You can call from anywhere in the world. You can send emails from anywhere in the world. It's effectively a denial of service attack. So it's also up to each county, like what is your emergency evacuation plans? How do you react to bomb threats? Are you able to preemptively get law enforcement in there with bomb sniffing dogs to make sure that the area is clear? Do you always evacuate? What happens the first time where people don't evacuate and there's an actually sophisticated adversary who is able to plant a bomb and detonates a bomb? From then on, everyone has to evacuate, right? Because if you don't, people could die. And then recognizability, right? Like, I think adversaries know very well, one, our websites are the primary mechanism that people see our organizations, but also like, it's a tasty target to come after election equipment. Fortunately, again, we're able to ratchet up the defense on that, especially if you have central tabulation. If you have precinct tabulation, by its very nature, it needs to be accessible, right? We need the voters to be able to go to those sites. So hopefully no one's willing to risk a national incident by doing some sort of attack against a voting site.
Going over audits, that's the most sexy thing. I've already hit that before. In former government, I hate being audited. Yes, I had to have a taxi take me from the airport home because I wasn't walking 30 miles. I'm sorry, I got a taxi. Next time I'll try to do better. You know, those type of audits. When it comes to auditing the vote, this goes back to the cyber element. I work insider threat doing digital forensics, which is, I hate to say it, glorified audit. Shouldn't say that. Nobody from work is watching.
You just define what we mean by audit in this case.
The audit would be, he said, what would we mean by audit? Being able to go back, reproduce the votes for accuracy. So if there's a contested election, can we reproduce it, or do we find anomalies? Should we keep recounting until we have an accurate number? And what's defined an accurate number, and when do we stop? Which is a whole different conversation, another talk for another day. Accessibility, the audit itself from an outside attacker is not that accessible. I would like to see personally something like a DTEX user-based analytics. I'm not paid by them to say that. When we're terminating people at day job, I can log into DTEX, I can watch every action they're taking during their termination meeting to see if they're trying to access something they shouldn't, detonate a logic bomb, malware, something else. Not saying we want to watch the audit tabulation or the vote tabulation as part of an audit, but being able to go back and say, this core machine in Kennesaw State, Georgia, that's aggregating all the vote for the state, this person logged on after hours, they went to this Excel spreadsheet, they're in there for 20 minutes, and then they save the result. Now I can go back to the server and see the previous version with the new version and look for, was this a unilateral vote change, or was there something in writing to affect this change, which should be part of the audit system. Recoverability, the voting system is backed up with multiple on-site backups. How vulnerable are the off-site backups? Just like anything else online, if you know where to go, but reaching those encrypted volumes would be extremely difficult. The effect of removing the audit system would be, I don't want to say devastating, that's a harsh verb, but impactful. And recognizability of, is that something a foreign adversary is going to say launch a cyber operation to target the audit system for voting system? Probably not. That's not something most would consider. Maybe they would now if they watch this talk, but that's not a high value target. So more of the physical security logistics, that's more of what y'all have worked with on the voting machine or voting precincts.
Yeah, so from, I would say 2016 to now, we've had to do a real deep dive on not only our elections buildings, but our entire process from chains of custody to moving ballots around to collecting ballots to doing pretty much everything with the understanding that an attack could come at any moment. So we will take ballots from a vote center, for instance, at the end of election day. We'll have hundreds of thousands of ballots, and typically we just pile those guys in a box truck and drive them back down into the main tabulation center. A while ago, we realized, okay, we really need to have some security here. So we employed the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office and are taking great pains to make sure we have GPS on these trucks with 2 cars from the Sheriff's Office unmarked in front and behind the vehicles. And then they come into a secure facility behind a locked fence, roaming patrols with the sheriff's office. We didn't really need this, I guess. Maybe that's not the right word, but we didn't really understand that, in 2010, 2016, whatever, that this was as important as it is now, because elections, unfortunately, has become a relatively, what did you say, juicy target? Or tasty target, there you go. So, yeah.
Done.
Good. So, I'm not going through it in order.
All right, yeah, we are short on time. So the last one, reputation. So what I am not saying, what I am never saying is that anyone should blindly trust elections and not in any way question the process, and that anything could, possibly, nothing could ever go wrong. I'm not saying that whatsoever, right? It's a human process. It's made of humans. Humans make mistakes. Sometimes humans have intentional malice, right? And as we already talked about, I would phrase it as Hanlon's razor, right? Don't attribute to malice what can be equally described by incompetence or whoopsie-daisies. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Like, we don't get do-overs with election days, and that's why we focus so much of our attention in Arizona in, we have an election check-in process. We're reaching out to the counties, making sure that they have all the support. Is there anything disrupting their elections? Is there anything my office can do? We lean heavily on, Maricopa as a very large partner, the Arizona Department of Homeland Security. The National Guard supports us, right? So, but what I will say is, as an attacker, as an adversary, this is the easiest thing to attack, reputation. Public trust is essential, right? If voters lose confidence that they are engaged in a trustworthy system that is not corrupted, they will not vote. That's voter depression, right? If you can be convinced, why bother? Then you don't vote. And then your voice is not heard. Like, you pay taxes, don't you? Why the heck would you not vote? That doesn't make any sense. But we're seeing a large swath of people losing confidence in elections, and that's somewhat on purpose and somewhat on accident by different adversaries and people that are trying to help, but aren't always. I'm not saying that I'm the arbiter of truth and that I know everything, right? But like, people accidentally pass on information that's not correct, right? Like, that's misinformation. Disinformation is when people are intentionally trying to trick you, right? There are hostile nation states that have a vested interest in Republicans and Democrats being at each other's throats. Like, we don't benefit from that, certainly. So if you're an adversary, why would you not try to erode our confidence in the system? Why would you not make up fake content like we saw with Georgia, Arizona, and Pennsylvania last year? We saw some Russian propaganda that was heavy-handed and clumsy, but still they went for it with synthetic content, with deep fakes, with how ChatGPT, large language models are. Like, that's going to ramp up like crazy, right? So we have to make sure that we ourselves are aware of that, and please, for the love of God, educate those around you, right? When you see something that is fake content, make sure you're able to communicate with your friends and your family. I have my mom, my grandma reaching out to me saying, like, is this real? Is this real? Frequently, it's not real. Like, owls don't carry baby owls on top of them while flying. That's not a thing. So, and it's also, we were talking about this, like, once the damage is done, the damage is done. We still have conspiracy theories that target real life people, and they were just line level staff, and their names are out there, and they still get repeated years after the fake claims. People once they have lost confidence, good luck reeling that back in, right? So I don't have an answer for this one, but it's why we do presentations, why we communicate with the public, why we frequently, through our comms teams, take media requests. Like, we have to find a way to make the truth as sexy as the lies, but like, good luck convincing people, like, read the Arizona Revised Statutes or the Election Procedures Manual. Like, that's not a thing the public wants to do. There's no fun music to it, like 2000 Mules, which is nonsense. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, basically, to tie into what Michael is saying, before we did this exercise, and much like Michael, I was new to the Carver scale. It took Will kind of focusing us through this thing and explaining how it works. But I would have not, 5-6 years ago, realized that we would have to put social media and reputation management, within the election scope, but that's essentially what we have to do. Michael mentioned we had some people on staff that were just doing their jobs that ended up getting doxxed, and they repeatedly, every single month, get death threats. It's like a constant repeat, right, of the same tropes and the same conspiracy theories, and they keep getting hammered by it every single day.
If I remember, wasn't that the poll worker saying, I can't press charges or I can't arrest this person for doing some activity, and the internet went wild, but they're poll workers, not law enforcement. A poll worker can never arrest somebody, if I remember correctly, being East Coast.
There are situations where, we have volunteers. We have thousands of volunteers for election cycles, and it's you can't tell everyone how to react to every situation, especially when it gets heated. So there are some interesting ones there. This particular situation, one of our help desk individuals was accused of deleting the entire elections database for the 2020 election in a nefarious way. An intentional way, and as I mentioned, they keep getting death threats every single month, and it's pretty gnarly. We actually had to move.
And it's nonsense. It's important to point that it's nonsense, Nate. It did not happen.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, it is very much nonsense. I thought that was implied, but if it's not implied, it's nonsense.
So, starting to wrap this up, before we went through the exercise, this slide was out there. We said probably the highest rated vulnerability is going to be public trust, the implied trust, the public perception of the vote system being accurate. We stepped through it. We wanted to disprove this, and after extensive, exhaustive conversation yesterday, like and subscribe for the long version, it's 10 hours, it came down to it's the trust of the system. Even if everything is perfect, but you believe it's biased, nothing can convince you that it's not the horns and halo effect.
But if I could have a closing thought, Will, in no way is anyone, I don't think any of us are saying, I'm certainly not, that we can't work on multiple things at once. And obviously, I would like election equipment to be better, and I would like to continue to work with the vendors, and equipment should improve over time. There should be patches. We should be able to apply them. That's why we're here as part of this conversation. But this is Voting Village. I think you've kind of moved away from Voting Machine Village, right? This is about protecting democracy. Voting machines are just a component of that, right?
So that wraps us up. Questions? Yes. We even have microphones. Fancy.
Just kind of, so if your number one concern, or what you're trying to throw out there, is consumer reliability, that we trust you, that you're doing a good job, just want to throw that out there well, that's what you're saying. You want to make sure that people feel good about it. That you've just been breached and you think it's the Iranians because of a picture. Have you done forensics on that breach? Because I'm thinking, as a citizen who has a little bit of knowledge in forensics, what else have they breached and they're just sitting there and you don't see them?
Understood. We've worked with the Arizona Department of Homeland Security, the National Guard. We bring on a private firm as well as our own staff. And we're at what point can you know without a shadow of a doubt that someone isn't sitting in a system? We're taking it as far as we can along that way, and we believe that there's no persistence.
Okay, no, but the words you were using, okay, if I was in Maricopa, and I'm not, but I do love it that you guys come every year and
yes, ma'am.
You always try to do better. But when you tell me you think it's Iran, and I'm wondering, have you done the forensics that prove where it came from? You should be able to find out where that is.
Attribution is incredibly challenging, and it is not necessarily our specialty. That is something that has to come from the federal government, and we've not been given it is definitely Iran, but we have moderate confidence that it's Iran.
You have a forensic guy right up there.
We had, at day job, North Korean IT workers in the system. We gathered what we could. We terminated their access. We gathered evidence, and then we turned it over to FBI to pursue that further because that's their wheelhouse, not us. We do day job. We can go as far as we can. And what's that? I can't hear you. Yes.
Yeah, and you also have to look at the fingerprints, right? You know, you can use VPNs, you can use, you know, proxies, whatever, to get around the geolocation attribution to Iran, right?
Right.
So you have to look at what's in front of you as well to make a fairly reliable and fairly successful attribution, and that's what's...
If I could knock on somebody's door and be like, did you do it? I would definitely do that, but yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So there's the timing of the bombing, there's the picture, there's the TTP being used by the adversary. All of these add up to moderate confidence. Right, it absolutely could
Right.
be.
False
It could be a
flags
red
are-
herring, a false flag, for sure.
But that is why we use multiple agencies, multiple partners, Arizona DHS, you know, the FBI. Those are all in play. It's not just Michael sitting here. Yeah. So.
For sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in maybe what the results of, like, having done the analysis, have you looked at potential countermeasures, things that you might be looking to implement? For instance, I'm 100% on board that the reputational and the trust issue is number one. And I'm sure looking at the ages of everybody in here, it's not been lost on us in our lifetimes that all the times we've spread the blessings of democracy, we have never brought electronic voting machines to Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever the hell else, right? So they have no cyber attack surface for their elections. Just as a point, you know, there's a whole classes of things nobody can have conspiracies about if they're not involved. So have you guys started to think about, you know, potential countermeasures for threats that you've assessed in this context, or using other models going forward for bolstering trust in elections?
Sure.
Because, you know, in addition to hardened systems, et cetera, I mean, this is a hacker conference. We know it's never going to be perfect.
Sure.
So
you know
there's always
that,
gonna be
but
residuals.
Grandma doesn't know that.
Right.
Well,
right? So,
true.
A couple of ways that we've been focusing on is going back to basics. You know, Arizona specifically is a paper voting state, and paper, as much as I don't use paper in my everyday life, and my handwriting looks terrible because I hardly ever use a pen anymore, paper is going to stay around for a very long time because it's incredibly difficult to move the ink from one circle to another on a paper ballot, and it's auditable. So if someone comes to us and says, hey, Nate, I really don't trust the election results that come down, what I would say to them in response is, we do a hand count audit after every single election, meaning we choose batches which contain several thousands, tens of thousands of ballots, and we have scores of people, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever, all going through and hand counting these ballots, and every hand count has to match up perfectly with the machine count, right? And if it doesn't, we go and try and figure out why. Usually, I was explaining this to some other guys today, it's usually adjudication. If somebody puts a weird bubble, and humans have to go, okay, what does that weird bubble mean on this, and what was that intent of that voter? That's usually where the issue comes in. So that's kind of our backstop when it comes to our elections. The machines can die, we can still count paper, right? So that's one of the things that we're doing. We also have a ton of backups. As I mentioned before, if our ISPs go down in one of our 250 vote centers across the county, we have an offline system that we can use. If our website goes down, we have the ability to spin it up in a completely different area and try and get essential services back. We have disaster recovery plans and continuity of operation plans that are all in place that we had to utilize. If everybody remembers CrowdStrike last year. Yeah, that happened during an election cycle. That sucked. So that was one of those situations where we had to fall back on our laurels, right? And we had to figure out, okay, we have vote centers open. We have people lined up to go vote at these places, and they can't because CrowdStrike bricked everything, right? So it's one of those scenarios where that was also a new thing that we never thought was possible. I didn't think Delta or United thought that was possible either, but they were in the situation they were in.
And I'll very briefly say, while our work predated the knowledge of the CARVER model, I don't get to work on just one thing at a time, right? As CISO, you got to juggle, right? Yep. So the idea of doing work like this, which we have already done, is I have limited resources, I have limited time. Where do I put those resources? Physical security, logistical security. Do we give additional training to poll workers, right? So regardless of whether or not you work in elections, I highly recommend that people go through this process if you're not already at your own place of employment.
Yep.
So with you being Maricopa County, obviously you know the ins and outs of
Yep.
of that area. Do you collaborate with other locales throughout Arizona, throughout the United States, big, small, more contested areas as far as intelligence sharing, threat sharing, anything like that?
Absolutely.
So we work very closely with the Arizona Secretary of State's office. Michael and his team have been great partners for us on the cybersecurity side. Adrian Fontes, he's the State Secretary of State, is very adamant that larger counties help smaller counties. So one example of that is Maricopa has a lot more resources than La Paz County or Gila County. In Arizona, very small entities. So we'll go into situations where we'll actually buy equipment for some of these other groups, like port blockers, for instance. Buying an extra 500 port blockers for us is not really that big a deal because we're already ordering 20,000 of these things, right? We'll also do information sharing. We've done sessions where we would go with Michael to some of these different sites and say, hey, this is how we have our stuff set up. You could probably do that too. There was one smaller county, Michael can probably expand on this a little bit more, but they had all of their equipment in one room and they just kept it there all year round, even when it wasn't in use. And it was a room that people were coming in and out of, doing all kinds of stuff. Our recommendation and with Michael's follow through, they started putting that equipment in locked rooms after that with more robust access control. So it's something that we try and pass down to other counties, and we also have relationships with other counties across the U.S. Miami-Dade County, we have a good relationship with them. Harris County in Texas, great relationship with them. And we've even collaborated with LA County, which is the 1,000-pound gorilla in the U.S. Their voting districts are massive compared to the rest of ours.
And I'll add briefly, so yeah, we have monthly statewide election security meetings, both for leadership, for IT folks, for comm folks, to make sure that the counties are all aware of current resources and vulnerabilities out there, and really try to ratchet up everyone's security maturity, because even while we're a bottom-up state, and I can't dictate to folks, everybody wants to be secure. Nobody wants to be compromised. So we've worked very closely with the Arizona Department of Homeland Security. They have a cyber readiness program to make sure that all the counties have implemented a next generation antivirus, or they have an equivalent in-house, a web application firewall, and these things are all paid for free of charge. So we're trying to get these resources for the counties that the vendor wouldn't even be able to do business with them, right? They're too small. They're not buying enough licenses. We work with the National Association of Secretaries of State. And yeah, like when the SharePoint thing hit, I'm on the phone calling people, making sure they're aware. I'm working with DHS. I'm working with the National Guard. Absolutely.
And the Secretary of State's office in Arizona, they do a lot of tabletop exercises, right? And smaller counties come in just the same as our larger counties. Every single injection and stuff we received, I'm like, oh yeah, we did, that was us, okay, that was us, but these other counties have never seen it before, right? So it's a very collaborative effort, and we like to do as much as possible.
That's the whole point. We must not think that being attacked is a weakness, that having a vulnerability is a weakness. If you get attacked and you clam up and you don't share it, then every attack is a surprise attack. Instead, we want to make sure that when folks say like, hey, somebody came after my website, these are the IOCs, this is what they did. So that attack is burned, that infrastructure is burned. We're hardened against it as a whole community. But unfortunately, sometimes folks politicize it, so we're trying to combat that.
And thank you for saying security maturity. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, say
Thank you for saying security maturity. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
If there's any other questions, we'll go ahead and call it a break, let y'all get out of here for the night.
All right.
Thank you for choosing to come here. We appreciate it.